Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve,
And I'm Marty.
and we do this podcast. We try to do it every week. We don't pull it off every week, but we try to cover different aquaponic cannabis topics, the community news, legal news, just general culture stuff, but mostly aquaponic cannabis related. It's about 90% of what we talk about. So thanks for joining us. Marty, do you want to tell us what you got going on in your garden today? I know you got posted a bunch this week.
Yeah, I hadn't been posting anything in a while, so I kind of wanted to get caught up. Actually, I hadn't even uploaded the last couple of podcasts, so I finally got that done. And we skipped 7. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but
Did we? Oh, well, I'm bad at math.
that's all right. Nobody expects you to count. It's all good. So yeah,
Lost episode.
I hadn't posted anything in a couple of weeks, so I finally got those uploaded. And then, I think I talked about in the last episode of the podcast, I just gotten the lumber delivered for my outdoors, so I got that built, and I really like that setup. I think it turned out really good. It's going to last a long time. It's out of pressure-treated lumber, so definitely not going to have to worry about it being out in the weather. So the tank is all insulated, so definitely check out the build for that. I just uploaded that, I think, yesterday or the day before. And and that's working really well. I think it drains out all 4 beds in just under 2 minutes. So it's really getting a good drain time. And I think the full cycle fill and drain combined is a little over 6 minutes. So it takes a little longer to fill and then drains out extremely fast. So I'm really happy with that. And so yeah, one of the things that I think is cool about that particular build is that pretty much no matter what happens in terms of like leaking or anything like that, all the plumbing is over the top of the tank. So if there's any leaks that come out, because I didn't glue anything together, it's all just pressure fit together. So if there's any leaks, it falls back into the tank. If there's a leak around where it attaches to the bed, it falls into the tank. If the bed somehow gets clogged for whatever reason, which it really shouldn't, because it's got a full 2-inch drain on the bottom, so there's no, there's not really a good place for anything to get caught up. I have a net pot that slips down inside the pipe. I'll catch any media from going down there, so that shouldn't be an issue. And but even if it did, for whatever reason, the beds are all angled back over the top, so if they overflow, they're going to overflow right over the top of the fish tank and right back into the tank. So hopefully, it's, for the most part, we'll conserve as much water as possible. Any leaks that I have will go right back into the tank, and any malfunctions, at least hopefully, ideally, I guess, I shouldn't be losing any fish if I have like a malfunction, unless it's like spraying water out of the tank somehow. Then I should be pretty good even if I overflow. But I've been running that 4-barrel system. It's the same one I ran last year, same 4 barrels and everything. And that U-siphon has been working really well for me. I haven't had it clog up or really anything like that. So overall, I'm really happy with that outdoor. I think it's gonna be there a while and work really well. So pretty excited about that. Did you have a chance to watch that video yet?
I haven't. The one with the U siphon and you have the couple different. Absolutely, yeah. I thought that was pretty dope.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I've been working on building that. Got that all finished up, and getting the pH step down. It takes a little while. When I have a whole new system that I put in, it takes probably a solid, I don't know, probably 24 hours of just, I mean, I don't do it regularly. I would say I probably do it like maybe 8 times or so, where I do just a little bit of pH down at a time until it finally gets down to where I want it, which is usually the window I keep it in is about 6.2 to about 6.5. Because I know as soon as I add water, it's going to come back up anyway. So usually, as long as I keep it topped off pretty good, I don't have to adjust it at all until after that. So I adjusted it when I first threw all the water in. I adjusted all the way down to about 7.5, and then let it cycle and put some fish in and all that kind of stuff, and then waited a little while and tested the end, make sure it was going to be about there. And so yeah, I think now it's running about 7, and I'll keep stepping it down until probably about 6.2 or so. I think I'll probably drive it down pretty good, because I know as soon as I start to top it off, it'll slowly start to creep back up on me again. So that's kind of how I handle it. And I know you wanted to talk about pH stuff as well. I don't know if you want to jump into that stuff right now, but that's kind of that's what I've had going on. How about you?
I've had a bunch of different stuff going on. I wish I could tell you guys what I've been doing, but I've been up in Orange Hill area quite a bit lately, working, planning out, and getting something ready. That's all I can say right now, but it's pretty dope. And yeah, so I guess kind of when the original project we came down here for is gonna, we had some issues with getting the land because some of the land was on government loan. We had like a 5-year loan program that we had set up at the end of the last year to acquire the land in preparation for legislation that happened before the election, which really screwed everything up. So we didn't end up getting, or 2 of the properties that we were originally had permit for, we're gonna not be able to get a renewal, which sucks, but it worked out really well because of that, we ended up looking around elsewhere, and we solved all of our problems and then some. So in this past week, and as soon as I can tell you guys about that project, I will. But it's going to be awesome, and very awesome things are going to come of it, and yeah, it'll be really, really, really good for you guys, the community, the general aquaponic cannabis community, and much, much more as far as the scale of the program we'll be working on. I have a university visit next week. It was going to be Monday, now it's going to be Wednesday, it looks like. I'll be able to get some video footage from UTech of Jamaica. They have a small aquaponic cannabis system they've been working on. Some students and one of the professors over there. I have a meeting with them, and we'll get some video footage over there and stuff, so that'll be pretty cool. What else? The licensing stuff's starting to move along. The new project I'm working on has all that stuff kind of taken care of, so I don't have to worry about that. So that's nice. I don't have to pull my hair out anymore. I can start working again. What else? That's everything on as far as that goes. Yeah, that's been everything going on for me. This new really big project with some pretty awesome people that y'all have heard of before that I can't mention yet, and there's some other things in the works back in the States in regards to large-scale aquaponics that we're working on as well. And then what was the other? Oh, I'll be up in Toronto in a couple of weeks, so I'll have some video footage from Green Grow, hopefully, if they'll let me take any. I'm sure they'll let me take some for showing you guys some of the stuff that's right now the biggest aquaponic cannabis grow on the planet right now in terms of square footage. But this new project we're working on in Jamaica is going to make that one look tiny when it's done.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's going to be dope. Yeah. So we were talking, you had a new idea this week about a lot of people don't want to go to the hydro store and stuff like that, so
Yeah,
a lot of people are, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of people have messaged me and said and asked me about different things, whether or not they can use them, how they can lower their pH, what kind of basic things do they need when they're starting out. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about is only available at the grow store or available online. Sometimes people, for whatever reason, sometimes they're not close to one. One person was way out in Eastern Oregon and they just didn't have anything, so they wanted to know. Basically all they had access was to a pet store. And a couple of other people had mentioned that also, that they have a pet store nearby and what kind of stuff can you get from there, and they asked me about things they saw at the pet store. So when I was there earlier getting some chicken feed, I decided to take a look at what they had, and this was one of the one of the products they had here from API. And just kind of funny, I guess Steve was saying he used to work for API, so that was kind of funny. But anyway, they had a bunch of this API stuff there, And they had one other one that was similar to it. This is just straight pH down, and it's mostly sulfuric acid, 9.6%. And it's labeled on the front that it is safe for fish and plants to use both. Let's see. So this combined with this, the test kit for pH, and this for pH down. Now, the reason I got pH down is because I know that I have high pH water, so there's no reason for me to pH up. The other product that was there was what they call the pH balancer. So pretty much regardless of whatever it was, it would try to return it to neutral of 7. So whether it's high or low, it's supposed to bring it back to 7. But for me personally, I know I'm never going to need pH up, so I chose to go with this one. But pretty much anything that you see at the place that's safe for fish is probably going to be also safe for your plants. But this one is also nice too because it's labeled right here on the front. It's safe for both of them. And obviously, sulfuric acid is not going to be great for your plants in large dosages as long as you follow the directions on the bottle. And it says right here, it gives you the measurements. So you need, looks like a half teaspoon or 2.5 milliliters for every 25 gallons of water. So there you go. Figure out how many gallons of water you have, do the calculation, and just do a little bit at a time, and it should work fine. I think those two combined were like 20 bucks. So it was like 12 bucks for the 12 or 13 bucks for the pH down, and then I think the kit was 5 bucks. So for around 20 bucks, you can get a sort of basic little pH setup. And the other bottle was the same too. So if you're not sure and you just want to be able to move it back towards neutral, so whether you need to go up or down, then they have those products at just at your normal pet store. I was just at the local Grange Co-op pet store here in town. It's where I get a lot of my different stuff for like my goldfish and stuff that I bought there. I like to support the local co-op, so that's kind of fun. And so I thought that might be kind of neat for, what kind of stuff can you use in your system. And in this case, it's just stuff that you can get from your local pet shop. And they even have that stuff at PetSmart. I've seen it at a number of different large chain pet stores. So pretty much anywhere you can find one of those, you can find the basic stuff you need to adjust your pH.
Yeah, so on that note, just be mindful that
you muted again, Steve.
You're echoing.
Oh, sorry, hang on.
So on that note, the sulfuric acid, you want to just be a little bit careful. You don't use that in super high doses, just because a lot of your other pH neutral nutrients are sulfur based. So, for example, later on we'll talk about potassium, but one of the best ways to dose potassium when it's pH, you don't need to adjust the pH, is potassium sulfate. Another one would be calcium. If calcium balance would be calcium sulfate. So just be mindful that you are adding sulfur to the system, and that you need to take that into account if you're going to be dosing other nutrients, that you're starting off with a higher than normal sulfur. But it is a perfect, it's a good pH down to use. Just take that into account when you're trying to balance your chemistry if you're dosing other nutrients within a close proximity to dosing that.
Right. And like I said, follow the dosage on the thing. Obviously, they're not going to tell you to dose a huge amount, especially since it's already fish safe. That's generally a pretty good indication that it's going to be fine for your aquaponics system.
The other thing I was going to mention is those pH balancers, like, pretty much completely useless for the purposes of growing for what we're doing. Most of those don't work super great, I'll be honest with you, having worked in the pet trade for quite a few years too. You're far better off going with like a straight pH up or a straight pH down and adjusting it, rather than trying to use one of those balancers, because they're really only useful for people that are just getting started, and people that are already starting off with like tap water that's pretty close to 7. If you have really hard tap water, that stuff doesn't work. So you're far better. Like in Colorado, for example, all your tap water is like 8.2 pH, 7.8 pH, all real high. It doesn't work. any of that, you have to use pH down. It doesn't, for whatever reason, the chemistry doesn't work out right. So just be on a side note, like don't waste your money on the balancers. Just go with a pH up or a pH down, whatever you end up going with, one way or the other.
Right. And again, I already kind of knew my water anyway. So for me, it was, an easy decision to just go with the straight pH down anyway. And I honestly have never seen anybody's tap water, whether it's city water or well water or anywhere, come out any lower than like 7.8. Like it almost always seems like it's high. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that do, but everywhere I have lived around here in the Pacific Northwest, at least, seems like it's just always high. So I don't know if that's like a thing or what, but
certain parts of the country have different pHs. I know there's some parts in the South where they'll get pH as low as the 5s, 6s coming out their tap. I forget what the legal lower limit. I think it's 6.2 is what it's supposed to be. I could double check that. What the EPA lowest pH is. I know what the high end is. The high end is 8.2 if memory serves me right. Yeah, drinking water. So yeah, I was wrong on the low end. 6.5 is what they recommend for the EPA.
6.5?
Between 6.5 and 8.5 is what the EPA recommends. So, yeah, so that, as far as your tap water, if it's anything outside of that, you might be able to call your water company and be like, hey, you need to do something about this. Oh yeah, you have a well, so you can't complain anymore.
I have to call myself.
Call yourself and be like, you gotta do something.
Yeah.
Put some pH down in that well.
That's right.
Another
Even
good
here, it wouldn't even matter. I mean, I'm sure we're at the bottom of the valley, so I'm positive that we're just pulling out of the main water table. You could probably pour pH down our well for the rest of time and still not be able to make a difference, just because it's got to be connected to such a large water source that it would be, like you wouldn't be able to adjust it in the well itself. So anyway, I mean, it has its other advantages, like we talked about. I get a lot of other macronutrients and stuff out of it. So, and even though it does come out extremely high pH, first of all, it makes it easy to manage because I know what to expect every time. Like I know that I'm going to put in high pH water, and if I let the tank get really low and I have to, put a lot of water in, then I just know ahead of time what I need to do. And I don't need to buy pH up. Obviously, it's just not something that I ever use, so I know that as well. So in a way, it makes it difficult that I have to manage it like constantly, but it's the same thing all the time. I know what to expect. So once you're prepared for it, it's not nearly as big a deal. Run a test every couple of days and pour a couple capfuls in. And, even then it's probably not even that often. As long as I stay up on managing the water to where I'm topping it off, without having to add too much, it'll stay within the buffer and then balance itself back out. So, that's been my pH experience anyway. And, we talk about that all the time. Whatever your water is what it is. And you just got to start messing with it to get an idea of how to do it. And it's really not that difficult, running the test. It's, when you open this thing up here, I'll just show you guys. For you beginners out there, it's just a little squeeze bottle. So you take 3 drops of this. You fill your water up to the line right here. Put 3 drops in, shake it up, and they give you this handy little color chart, and you can match up your color. Whatever color your water is what you get. Yeah, it's probably not perfect or exact or any of that stuff, but it's definitely good enough for especially just the home aquaponics system.
Those titration tests from API in general are more accurate long-term than pH pens. Like I always double check my pH pen if I think it's weird or whatever. Always double check it against the API kit, because as long as those things don't get too hot or too cold, and they're not more than, they're good for about 2 to 4 years for most of their kits, and don't get them too hot or too cold. But as long as you do that, they're real good. I've used them thousands and thousands and thousands of times working between the pet trade, the hydro trade, and aquaponic. So they're good.
I've considered getting a pan a couple of different times, but from everything I've read, they just require to be calibrated, and you have to calibrate them from time to time, and they can become inconsistent. And I just didn't want to deal with that. It's so easy to do these ones that it's kind of like, well,
I prefer to get like my favorites are to get Milwaukee style with the detachable probes, because you can replace the probe and then you still have like the good computing unit.
Right.
That's the better part. And the probes are usually between, I think they're like $35. It's not too bad just to replace the probe. So if every 2 years or whatever, you change out the part that goes bad, rather than having it be all in one unit that's like $100 and then you're stuck with it. You can spend 115, 120, and then you can change out the part that goes bad after a while.
That's cool. That's a good recommend. What was the name of that place, just for the people that are watching?
Oh, the brand I recommend the most is this Milwaukee brand.
Milwaukee?
Yeah, I know a lot of people like Blue Labs, and I actually have some experience at Blue Labs. But Blue Labs are okay, but Milwaukee is the one that I use the most. I used Milwaukee with calcium reactors for a long time in salt water, and they'd stand up real good in that kind of environment too. So anything you're going to run through that kind of environment, in my opinion, is way tougher than what we do in aquaponics in terms of erosion or corrosion rather. I'm sorry. So I trust. That's the brand I use for anything that if I have the option of picking what brand to go with for automated pH sensors and all that stuff.
Cool.
The other thing I was going to mention on the note of stealthy pH down, the other pH down that you can get is you can go to the brew store and get phosphoric acid for beer and wine making, and that's another really good. You're adding phosphorus to the system, and that's another really good. If you don't want to go to the hydro store, you're in a place where it's a little bit harder, or they don't have hydro stores, and you happen to have a brew store or brew community in your, that's a great place to get it. And you can get directions online for 11% phosphorus, cut it down to 11%. There's a couple of different products out there that are like 8%, 11% phosphoric acid that you can just copy the directions, dosing directions for. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I'd read them off if I was at home in the U.S., but that won't be till next month. So.
Right, and I think we talked about phosphoric acid in the last episode when we talked about pH a little bit too, which is definitely my preferred one. This one being sulfuric is not. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a little bit harsher acid, and I would much rather add phosphorus to the system than sulfur, just because you consume more of it. So it's more. I guess it's more beneficial to the plants, I suppose. Whereas the sulfur, it's not that it isn't, they just don't really consume it on the same level, especially the plants that we grow, right? During certain stages, they have some much higher phosphorus requirements.
Yep. Actually, I have another, when I finally get the patent on it here or whatever, I have another way of doing pH organically down, but I can't share it quite yet.
The fertilizer stuff you were talking about, or is that something else?
No. This is something else completely. This is a project I worked on and tested for like 1.5 years, 2 years, that only a handful of people have had a chance of seeing it. I have a fully automated pH up, pH down, all organic. It's very cheap to run. It's really cool, and it scales to all different size systems, but that'll be, hopefully by the end of the year, I'll be able to show you all how that works. It's really cool.
That sounds cool.
We have some other cool stuff in the works that's coming as well. What was the other thing? So the other thing we were going to talk about in regards to pH down is that you want to make sure you can't just use any old hydroponic pH down. A lot of times people will ask, can I use like general hydroponics or, general hydroponics, I think we brought up in one of the other episodes.
Yeah, general hydro is probably the exception to that, in that they're mostly phosphoric acid with a little bit of citric. So, and they're really cool about, actually, they have a PDF that has all the information about their pH down mix you can actually download. And some places won't give you that kind of information.
Yeah.
They'll just basically say, here, it's pH down, and it's the active ingredient is sulfuric acid. That's exactly what this is, actually. All it does is tell you what the active ingredient is, and won't tell you what the rest is. But and so a lot of them are like that. But General Hydro, if you go on their website, they have the whole PDF you can download about basically what it consists of and what it is. And it's mostly phosphoric acid, and then a little bit of citric acid added in there as well. So, and that's the one that I use and been using primarily. But again, you get that at the Hydro store.
The one caveat I did want to bring up is that General Hydroponics is owned by Scott's, and Scott's is owned by Monsanto, just so that people have the right to make that decision if they want to. That's the one thing I don't like about them. But make sure that you aren't using citric acid based ones. You'll see like organic pH down. Sometimes a lot of that is citric acid based, and that's not okay. Another good source of oh no, that wouldn't work. Sorry, different thought. But yeah, so you want to make sure you don't use that, and then there's but you can't just use any old pH down. Most of your other hydroponic pH downs are intentionally antimicrobial, and we don't want to do that because you'll crash your system.
Right. We talked about that with hydro stuff before too. If you guys are, for those that watch the other episodes, the whole goal in hydro is to be able to wipe out all microbial life so that you don't develop basically root rot or other things that they don't want growing in there. They get really sort of paranoid about anything growing besides their plants. So that's why you see them recommend like low pH for water as far as what we're concerned. You would never pH water that low and still be able to have, microbial life that we rely on in order to be able to get nutrients to our plants. So, yeah.
Somebody in chat asked who Green Relief was. I'm going to put a link here in chat for you.
What was that?
Somebody in chat asked who was Green Relief when we were talking about him, when I was talking about him earlier. I'm just going to put a link to their thing in the chat.
I don't have chat up. Sorry.
No worries. It's all good. These things happen. We had a bunch of problems today with scheduling and everything else, so it's cool that we still managed to pull it off. We tried to do an evening episode to see if we had more live viewers, and ended up being late enough to where it's probably going to end up being about the same.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My wife wasn't feeling well earlier.
No, it's all good.
Postpone a little bit, so had to get the kids in bed and all that. Can't be sick and having to manage all that stuff too. So got them rounded up. They're at least upstairs now. They're still running around, but I'll go put them back in bed here before too long.
So did you want to talk about? Did you still want to cover potassium? Or do you want
we can talk about potassium.
So we got a lot of we decided, or we were talking last week episode or the episode before about starting to do trying to do a nutrient every week or every episode or some kind of aspect of one of the nutrients or whatever. And I thought we could do potassium today because potassium is a pretty easy one, and there's a million different ways to dose it depending on what you need to do. So basically the range you're aiming for potassium, you're looking for like 100 to 144 parts per million, depending on, we'll go a little bit lower in veg, a little higher in flower. And that's really what you're aiming for your parts per million. And then you have a wide range of stuff you can dose with. Do you want to talk about how you manage it, and then I'll go over the stuff I have?
Well, I mean, I really don't, I guess, to be honest. Like I don't test for it. I don't know what parts per million I run. I don't really know any of that stuff. So basically the potassium that I know that I'm getting in the system is just what I know that I put into the worm bin. And so we eat so many bananas here. I get a ton of banana peels in there, and I know they don't necessarily provide a lot, but we really do. I mean, we probably go through like at least 4 to 5 bushels of bananas. Bushel, is that what they're called? I don't even know. So anyway, we go through a ton of bananas. So sometimes there's even you get the odd bruised one or something that somebody doesn't want to eat, or it gets smashed or whatever. So all that stuff goes into a bokashi bucket in here, and other stuff too, as well. There was a couple other ones I was trying to remember. I looked up. I was surprised what the potassium content was on it when I looked up potassium-rich plants. With that in mind, was looking at which ones I would want to make sure get in the same way that I want to leave out ones that provide nitrogen. I want to try to put in the ones that provide the other nutrients that I need. And so I went through and do that, and I can't remember now which one it was. Maybe you know a couple of them off the top of them, but there was one of them that surprised me that was significantly higher. Maybe it was kiwis. I want to say it's something like that.
Oh, I'm not sure on that one. I know that there's some different fruits down here in Jamaica that are put bananas to shame as far as potassium, but I'm not sure about. I think kiwis, nestberry, I think is another one that has a really
I could
high
be
potassium.
completely wrong on that. On the kiwi, it was just a random fruit like that isn't necessarily like rare or hard to get or anything like that. I just didn't associate it with potassium.
The issue is that it takes like 1,000 bananas to give you enough, the same as like a teaspoon of potassium sulfate or potassium chloride. Yeah. So that's one thing I would definitely not recommend for regulating potassium. Sometimes you'll see people say put banana peels in your grow beds and let the worms eat them. That adds maybe like 0.2 parts per million, maybe 1 part per million available potassium once the worms are done with it. Like, you're not adding anything in terms of ability to boost it. You want to use mineral salts, and there's a bunch out there. The ones that I've used are so pH neutral. You're looking at potassium sulfate or potassium chloride. Just be mindful you don't want to dose a ton of potassium chloride at once, because you are adding some chloride to the system. So it does need time to off-gas once the chloride separates from the potassium and you dose with it. So it works really good as a foliar spray as well, especially if you have a little bit of like fungal stuff going on. That's a real good one if you don't want to worry about altering the pH. Same thing with potassium sulfate. Both of those are pH neutral. Now, if you're going to raise your pH, you have a couple of different. Oh, the other one that's pH neutral is potassium magnesium sulfate. It's also called langbeinite. That's one of my favorite things to dose with, because you're adding potassium, magnesium, and sulfur. And then I can just go ahead and use like calcium carbonate, and then I have my CalMag and P, or CalMag and K all covered. You see what I'm saying? And yeah. Because covering CalMag and potassium, all of those together with aquaponics, rather than, you don't really have the option of just doing like, calcium nitrate and, like a typical hydro CalMag doesn't quite work chemistry-wise for aquaponics. So it's my favorite way of going about it, and that works really, really well. And then, so if you're going to raise your pH, if you need silica, you go with potassium silicate. And then if you're looking for other options, you can always use potassium carbonate or potassium bicarbonate. But pretty much everyone I see, every time I look at, or I would say 90% of the time when I'm looking at helping out people that are giving me water sample stuff, they're real low on silica. And silicate helps so much with your mold resistance, your heat resistance, stress response reduction in the plants, as far as negative stress responses, and just a whole bunch of different things that really make the plant harder to be attacked by fungus and insects, and more easy to recover. It also helps with salt resistance and being able to withstand higher sodium levels if you have high sodium in your water. So that's also another real important aspect to it. to why you would want to use potassium silicate for a while, or even alternate between potassium carbonate and potassium silicate as far as dosing goes with your potassium.
Yeah, I saw, I think it was potassium, or no, I bet it was phosphorus, the pH product, the pH down product from the aquaponics source. What is it?
Phosphoric acid. It's 11%
They had a name for
phosphoric
it.
acid.
It was like Botanicare or something like that.
They have a Botanicare pH down. I don't know. I don't follow up with their current stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the last place that you want to look at. But I think I saw the aquaponics group on Facebook post it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. By the way, that fruit that I couldn't remember, the two of them that I was surprised were by avocado and cantaloupe and potassium. I didn't know that. But kiwi, not so much.
Yeah, be careful though. Avocado, you don't want to put in your aquaponic system. At least the fruit and skins, that'll kill your fish. Avocado will kill a whole wide range of animals.
Anyway, I put all that stuff.
Yeah, never give avocado to chickens either. Avocado will kill your chickens and your goats and all that. You got to be real careful. That's one of the few things that humans have an enzyme for. And primates have it. A lot of other primates have an enzyme for it, but not many other groups of animals do. Dogs and cats are also have to be careful around guacamole and avocado. So we have normally do like a crop of the week or a non-cannabis plant of the week or whatever. This week we wanted to cover basil. I really like Petra basil, which is a purple one. Another good one is Genovese. And then I'm trying to think of some of the other varieties. I had 2 other varieties on the thing, but it didn't update. Sorry, I had 4 varieties I had listed, and 2 of them didn't update when I had disconnected earlier.
I don't even know what varieties I have. I do have some basil that's growing, but it's not very big yet.
Oh, so we have a lemon basil here, and then there's like a citrus basil in Jamaica. The other cool one that I've seen out here, and some of the growers grow it around their grows because it's insect resistant, and they like to grow it in with the weed, is culantro. It's a relative of cilantro. It likes a little bit warmer temperatures. So if you're running a warmer grow room or whatever, it's good too, or a greenhouse or stuff. But you can, they put them kind of on the edge, and they'll grow them around, not in the field, but kind of around the edge of the field to keep anything from coming in from the bush. And it's real pungent. I mean, it smells like cilantro if you took cilantro and made an extract out of it.
That's cool.
So
I'm always down for
really good for cooking. Yeah, it's great for cooking. You can dry the leaves and save it as a dry herb or sell it or whatever. But it's a great companion plant if you're trying to grow plants that were be deterrents. And it's one of the other ones I wanted to mention as well.
Yeah, I like ones that you can eat too. Like that's probably one of the things I see a lot of people growing or stuff like clover or things like that. They're just like not necessarily bad, but just in my opinion, not very useful as opposed to something that you can eat that for the most part can do the same thing. And so that's why I grow a lot of different lettuces, and like basil is a great one too, because it's obviously not going to take any of the nutrients for the most part that you really need. It's not going to consume a ton of iron or calcium or anything like that. I mean, some obviously, but not a large amount, like say strawberries or something like that. And it's also going to be insect repellent and give you other stuff as well. So I really like companion planting. It's one of the things that I've found that has been really cool. And so the fact that you can eat it is great. And I grow like green onions, leeks, basil, lettuce, like pretty much all those leafy green stuff. I have no issue putting them in with my medicine plants.
Oh, so I actually had So, interesting question I got in my email to yesterday or today. It was like some guy was growing. He wanted to set up his greenhouse and everything, and he's pretty sure his state's going to legalize in the fall. So he wanted to set up a greenhouse and have a good allegory plant. You know, a plant that he can practice on as far as pruning technique, dual root zone, all that. And if you're looking for a really, really good allegory plant, and you're in a state like that, or you're a company and you want to do a lower cost crop while you're trying to tinker and get everything running without, you know, costing yourself a bunch of money in cannabis. Peppers are a great allegory. They're a woodier stalked plant. You can do the whole pinching, bending. You can do all the grafting. You can mainline them. You can do all the different grafting techniques, just like cannabis. It's a real good practice plant. And you can, when you do them dual root zone, you're going to see a huge, enormous difference, just like you would with cannabis. And it's a great practice plant if you're looking for something that you have a legalization coming up, and you want to get your feet wet, and you're all eager, and you can get stuff going pretty soon. Get your system up and running, get it cycled, get those things running, get your peppers going, and then swap those pots out the day that you're allowed to, kind of
thing. Right, and especially if you can do a little bit of planning ahead of time, then you should be able to just pull out the pots that have the peppers in them and swap the pots in that have the pots in them.
Yep.
And should be good to go. So yeah, I definitely recommend that. Or peppers are much better in terms of like the actual growing structure and stuff like you're talking about. You still have a fruit as well, so you'll get obviously if you get big healthy bell peppers, you're probably also going to get big healthy buds. It's kind of the same way with tomatoes and the way they equate it, but the difference there is that it's much more viney in the way that it grows, as opposed to, like you were talking about, more of a woody, stocky plant, much more like what cannabis is. And also, some places it's perfectly legal. You have to check, obviously, but it's perfectly legal to grow and they have hemp seeds that are available. And so, obviously, that while as it's not necessarily as fun or painting as all those things, you could basically grow essentially as close as you're going to get to cannabis and still be legal. There's only a handful of states that hemp is still legal to grow in, but if you're in one of those, then you can obviously do that. But peppers and tomatoes are great just in terms of looking at the plants themselves and what kind of fruit they produce. For the most part, it's been an age-old thing for a long time that if you can grow tomatoes, you can grow weed, and that's what ended up convincing me to finally do cannabis as well, was being able to grow big juicy tomatoes or tons of cherry tomatoes. I mean, last year just had tons and tons, had to give away tons of them just because there were so many just off of a couple of cherry tomato plants. I think we had a Sweet Million, I think was what it called, Sweet Million cherry tomatoes. And it would put off like, I don't know, it was like 24 cherry tomatoes per one fruit truss. And it was just ridiculous. So it was a lot of fun and great stuff. And so when you can produce like that, you're going to be able to produce some sort of quality cannabis as well. It's a great way to be able to tell if you're getting in rot on the end of your tomatoes, then you're probably running into a calcium deficiency that's going to be a problem when you're growing cannabis as well. So whatever problems you have to fix to grow those things, you're going to have to fix to grow cannabis anyway. So it's a great way to get started.
So I figure we hit the news articles real quick. Did you want to talk about how the lawsuit just finally went forward in Oregon?
Yeah, so there's actually two lawsuits. One of the main ones that just got filed, the one that was in the news we were talking about, was leveraged against Jackson County for the regulations that they put on growers in Jackson County. And we talked about this quite a bit, with basically you're limited to the amount of plants that you have. Like me personally here, because of where I'm zoned, even though I'm not really in a residential area, maybe a little bit, but for the most part, I've got a big backyard. There's on the other side of me, it's like nothing but wetlands out there. There's literally nobody back there. But because you're zoned in a specific way, you're limited in the number of plants that you can have, and in some cases that you can grow outdoors at all. Like, because I'm technically zoned residential here, I can't grow outdoors without a permit, which essentially is a permit to be out of compliance. And how that makes any sense, I don't know. But I can pay, essentially by the time I get done, it's like $1,653 I can pay to have the permit. So it's kind of weird in the way that it's set up, and how they interpreted all that is essentially illegal. And that's what the lawsuit is about, is that the state put forth legislation that Jackson County interpreted to be contradictory to what the state actually meant. So if you are a board member and you take legislation and you interpret it so that it creates the opposite of what they intended it as, that is illegal. And that's what they're essentially getting sued over. And they've got a lot of support at this point. They have state representation. So I think it was Jeff Merkley, I believe, was the one who probably wrote the most scathing letter that would basically said, you know, he was actually one of the ones that drafted the legislation for the state. He's the state representative, and he basically said, you know, yeah, what they did was illegal. That's exactly the opposite of what we intended. We didn't want any of that stuff to happen. Jackson County needs to do A, B, and C, which was, you know, basically remove all those regulations, or make your regulations allow for what the state says that you can grow. So whatever OHA, which is the Oregon Health Association, who's supposed to oversee medical marijuana program, whatever they regulate has to be allowed for. So if they say that as a patient, no matter what, you have to be able to grow for yourself. And like for here, right now, I couldn't grow for myself and my wife. So two patients couldn't live under the same household under Jackson County's current regulations. So they have to at least account for those basic minimums, which they don't have to do right now. Now, the bad news is probably none of that stuff is going to be resolved before this outdoor season comes around. So a lot of people for this outdoor season are still going to be pretty much shit out of luck. So,
how much
like
are they
personally here,
how much are they actively rating people?
Well, they're not at this point. Everything is supposed to be complaint based. But even Jackson County themselves doesn't really have a ton of answers. I called and talked to them a few weeks ago just to try to figure out like what exactly I was zoned and what, you know, try to get an interpretation out of them. And even they didn't exactly know. I had to put in probably like 3 calls to them before I got like what the process was to get the permit and how much it was going to cost and different things like that.
So what would be the downside to just planting what the state allows and then seeing what happens? Because if they're saying they have to repeal it back to that anyway, there would be no way that they could really do anything legally against you if it's going to get thrown out. I mean, they technically could, obviously, but
yeah, I think this. You know, I posted the article on this too, but essentially what it outlines is exactly what happens, which is it's all complaint based. So, which means I know my neighbor next door, he already sent me a nice letter that said he was going to complain as soon as he's allowed to. Once they complain, then they're going to come out here and give me the option to apply for the permit. They give me the option to apply for the permit. I apply for it. I get the permit, or I don't get the permit. So if I don't get it, they come back and they have to witness me chopping down the excess plants. So if let's say I planted what I should be able to grow at bare minimum, should be my 6 plants, my wife's 6 plants, and my 4 recreational plants, which is the same thing that I grew last year. So I should be able to grow that at minimum. So I'm going to plant all those and basically go with that. And when they do complain and they come to look at it, hopefully by then the interpretation will have changed. And keep in mind too, this is only on flowering plants. So that means that only is going to be, nothing outside is going to start flowering until for me here, because I get so much light, my days are so long, I don't even start flowering until like the second week of August.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty late flowering season here. So I won't even have to worry about it until then. And up until then, or any time really, for veg plants, you can have as many as you want. So, I could plant my whole backyard and have a lawn.
Let's have a light. Be like, those are still in veg.
Those are still in veg. That's right. I'm waiting
So
to pick my tin.
little darkness tent that moves around the yard.
Yeah.
The floodlights on the yard.
And so
that's gonna be hysterical. It'd be so funny to like push that lawn to the complete max and do some just ridiculous grow like that. And I would totally throw money towards a project like that just to piss them off. That'd be fun.
Right. And so you really could. You could veg 200 plants in your backyard all the way up until they started flowering, and then just pick the 10 that you could grow, or the 16 that you could grow, or whatever it is. But and still be perfectly legal. And so I do think that would be really funny to be able to do that. But so that's kind of where we're at in Oregon right now, is that the lawsuit's been filed, like you talked about. Everything is going to be complaint based. So that's going to be kind of the process there. If there's no reason to just go out and get the permit. Actually, you've been able to apply for the permit for a while now. And out of the like 2,000 plus growers that are registered in Jackson County, there's been 7 people that have applied for it, even though there's like I said, over 2,000 of them that quote unquote probably should apply for it if they want to be able to grow outside, which I can't imagine, so that here you wouldn't want to. It's kind of, it's free energy. Why would you not want to grow outside?
So on that note, there's an article that was posted this week that I was reading. I was kind of laughing about it. I wanted to share it with y'all. So this is from Humboldt County of Humboldt Planning and Building Department. They
Nice.
So they're making all the growers in Humboldt apply for their grower permits. Not nowhere near as bad as Jackson County, but they just have to get a permit or whatever. They're completely overwhelmed with applications. They're getting like, so their hotlines had 447 calls. They're processing registration forms. They've had 470 with 110 people seeking application assistance. They've had more people apply for permits for any kind, and they includes all the permits, in 90 days than they did all of 2015.
Yeah, everybody's
yeah.
They're all counting on the legal to go through.
Yeah, so the staff's asking for a moratorium on applications, like right at the beginning of grow season, which is like completely fucked.
Right.
And just because they're overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you guys should have some money from all these applications. Can't you hire a temp? Like, isn't that, you have 447 people's worth of applications. You can't hire a temp to help you here? This is like basic management skills here. This is the problem with government. Anyways, I don't understand why they can't just hire a temp. It sounds like they have more than enough money now. I don't know. They didn't say how much the permits are, but it was really funny. The articles about them getting sick.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in Humboldt. My family, my wife's family is from Eureka in Ferndale. And my mom's family is from Garberville, so I used to go visit her in the summer. I grew up with my dad, but I go visit her for throughout my childhood, and lived down in Eureka there in Humboldt for a while. And I can tell you that doesn't surprise me a bit, being overwhelmed by applications. And probably the real reason why they're so overwhelmed with applications is that even the ones processing the applications, they're probably stoned off their ass.
Oh yeah.
Just the way Humboldt is. And they're probably busy setting up their own grows too. They'll be like, oh yeah,
right.
We'll get your applications.
I need time to get my damn plants in the ground. That's what I need.
Yeah, I gotta get plants in the ground. Then we'll process them.
Yeah, then we'll process. And then right before we start processing the plants again.
Yeah, they'll probably be like, here, let me process this application. By the way, you need some clones? I got some clones out back.
I got some clones, yeah. What strains you need? Just come back to the pickup truck.
That's right.
Um,
Usually it's a van. I like
okay.
vans.
Um, down in Jamaica, nobody gives a fuck. There's just plants
Right.
everywhere. So I saw literally a truck full of weed the other day, like driving through a cane field, and I was like a lorry truck, like a straight up lorry truck full of weed. I was like, damn, I don't think I've seen that much before, like harvested. Um, Aurora Township in the city of Aurora in Colorado is taking a whole huge percentage of their tax funds, $1.5 million of their cannabis tax funds, and they're giving it to, I'm sorry, $220,000 of the $1.5 million generated from the taxes will be donated to the homeless shelter in the Colfax Community Network, which is the Aurora Mental Health Center and the Committis Crisis Center in Aurora. That's pretty awesome to see the tax money going. Not only does it go to the schools in Colorado, but now it's going to help the less fortunate. So that's really, really dope. It's good to see cannabis doing good for the world. This is what this plant should be doing. It should not be arresting people. It should be doing awesome things like helping out the homeless. So.
Yeah, I can't even I have zero patience for fucking places that refuse the tax money. Like we have a couple of counties here. Well, actually, we have a shitload of counties here in Oregon. Like I think we talked about this before. The whole one side of the state, like the whole east side of Oregon, for the most part, if you look at a map, has banned cannabis growing dispensaries, like all that stuff. And they're basically just pissing money away for people's schools.
Well, you know what? That's the other thing. People want that tax money. When they see how much it makes, they're like, oh, well, we want some of that tax money for our schools. Why are you giving us less money? And it's like, well, you guys aren't generating any. Like, maybe if you guys, that should be a caveat in the cannabis bills, that the county has to allow cannabis sales to get the school money. Like, I'm all for helping schools and all, but they can't be just mooching off of the county next door. They need to be doing their fair share as well. You know what I mean?
I don't know for sure, I guess, but I do know that it was a debated issue here. At least they spoke about it on the news, that they weren't going to receive funding because of the ban. It was part of the debate they had around
Colorado, but I could be wrong.
And so I guess I just assumed that was the case, and that's the way they presented it here on the news as well. But I didn't check on that specifically, but I do think that if that is the case and you are depriving, whether it's your kids or other kids, doesn't really matter. If you're depriving schools of funding because you can't stand somebody else going to a store and buying a product and going home and using it without your knowledge, then first of all, you're extremely immature. And second of all, it's just stupid. Like, what's the point of that? Like, why not have that transaction count towards a kid's education, whether you agree with it or not? Right? Like, I don't necessarily agree with the alcohol that millions of people are purchasing right this minute. But why I'm not going to go out there and be like, no, you can't do it. And by the way, we don't want any of that alcohol money going to our schools. Like, how is that morally makes sense? It doesn't add up for me. So,
right?
Stupid.
So it looks like Colorado just does it collectively, like on the state level. So there is no real, I can't find any articles on it. Someone can correct me, or I'll correct this in a future episode if that's wrong. I'm going to research that more.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious now about Oregon too. Maybe, our news is far from perfect. That could have just been a way they were presenting it. So, especially our local news, they get extremely incompetent. So I wouldn't trust much of what they have to say, but at least that was what a lot of the debate was about here when all the different counties were talking about banning it. And I guess in a way, even if you're not, like you were just talking about, even if you do still receive some of the funding, you're not producing any of it. The fact that you aren't willing to allow those transactions to be counted in your county even though they're going to happen anyway. Like the people that smoke weed in your county have smoked weed in your county for a long time and are going to continue to smoke weed in your county,
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not you ban it. So you're really just refusing to take in money for schools. Like
Yep.
that's really all you're doing. Like if you just said, okay, it's fine, you can go ahead and now count that money.
Well, not
That's
even.
going to exchange hands anyway.
And on top of that, I mean, there's a lot of these smaller Colorado towns in the mountains, on the Front Range, down near Pueblo and stuff. There's a couple that are just little tiny towns, and they've managed to like build one or two big dispensaries or distributors that they can send up back to Denver. You're echoing a little. The they have, they're able to basically revive the town and be able to get people to come in off the highway again and pop in their little town. And I know there's 2 or 3 little places like that in the mountains where they were small little towns that not many people stopped at before they had a weed shop, and now they have a restaurant and they have like a convenience store, and these other little businesses have popped up around it, and now they have enough traffic, more money flowing into the town, and it's just better for all these little towns in general. They're screwing themselves out of not only the tax money for the schools, but just the ability to bring in a big injection of cash into their town in general, help out the diners, help out the gas station, help out the bakery, help out everybody. It doesn't just go. That's the biggest thing, is they're not just turning down money for the schools, they're hurting their community.
Right, and again, it's really not any different than any of the other taxes that we put on alcohol and tobacco right now. It works in exactly the same way. And I really don't get why. I mean, nobody's saying let's ban alcohol from our county, and refusing the tax money that comes from alcohol. And so that sounds like a crazy thing to suggest. And I think that it should be just as crazy to suggest the same thing about cannabis, even more crazy, because it is, at least in my opinion, is safer and all those other things. But let's say you disagreed with me anyway. It still seems like stupid to not be able to realize that money and product is going to change hands regardless of whether or not you're okay with it. And you might as well get that covered. The same thing applies for me. Like, I don't care if you want to go buy rum or Bacardi or go to the bar or do whatever else. Like, that's all your fucking business. Like, I don't have to agree with it. It really doesn't make any difference to me. Like, do whatever you do. And in the process, fund the school. If you're going to go get drunk, you might as well have it on the books. It wouldn't make any sense to just buy a moonshine or whatever from an old man. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm sure people do that too. But the point is like, why not make it available? Like, have the option to go to a legal place and buy it and pay your tax and have all that same stuff happen in the same way that more damaging things already do. So I think that we have a model for it already that we don't follow just because we want to like somehow reinvent the wheel, and sort of like tiptoe around these people that want to be able to complain about their neighbors growing weed. Like, at some point, I think we're just going to have to tell these people that care, like, too bad. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I don't like the smell that comes from your house either. Like,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you need to get over it. Like, it's still just a smell or whatever else. I think I sent you that clip about that guy that was just like, be offended. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
It's fine. So I kind of think that attitude needs to be
Plus, if
taken.
you live in Humboldt County and you have a problem with weed, you're the one that needs to move. Seriously, like.
If you live, okay, Humboldt County, this is a really weird place because I've studied it a lot because I spent a lot of time there. And the main thing that you have is like, it's so polar opposite. Okay, you have like all this leftover logging industry of like all of these like tough, real sort of like salt of the earth, like old school drinking beer, chewing the lip, like, that's like a large part of my family that I just described right there. So like, I definitely understand that sort of like group of people that exist there. And then you have the polar opposite of like in Humboldt, you have like this huge group of pot smoking, growing, selling, like entire industry of people that, and they both like almost really hate each other. Like they clash constantly. And it's like you're almost one or the other. There's very little gray area. Like you have this extreme, you have that extreme, and somehow they do manage to work it out. Like it does strike a balance, but it's a very angry balance. Like there's a lot of bickering back and forth. Like I remember when we lived there, and I think it was one of my wife's relatives, I can't remember, cousin, something or other, was on one of the boards there, and we went to a meeting that she was sitting on the board for, and it was just a whole lot of that back and forth, very, very polarized. One extreme over here, one extreme over there. People wanted to be able to grow. People really didn't want to be able to grow, and they need to take their weed back to Mexico, and just like all these, like, you know, it's sort of like it's like a constant Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump rally. Like, just if you just lived at one rally with the other right next to each other, that's Humboldt right there.
How about the fact they might be debating, which is pretty dope. I can't wait to see that one if it actually happens. I don't know if you saw that in the news today. That would be pretty.
I saw that too. I don't know that I believe it's going to happen, but if it does, I will definitely watch that.
Just the two loudest candidates that are running together. That would just be so great.
Yeah, I quit watching all the other debates. I didn't watch the last Hillary Bernie debate. I didn't watch the last Republican circus. I haven't watched the last.
The Republican is too good.
I mean, other than the highlights, obviously you see the highlights, but I didn't watch any of the other one. I did watch the first few when there was like 17 of them or something like that. The Republicans
all yelling at each other.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I love just watching Chris Christie make an ass of himself, because he just, I don't know.
Get to do that more. Although I don't know. We'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, if Trump wins, he's getting appointed to something. I just hope it's not anything to do with
Secretary of Defense. How about that? He can be a warmonger and whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
As long as not Attorney General. Anything but Attorney General.
That's right.
Vice President, even he wouldn't do as much damage as he would if he was Attorney General.
I'll be hitting you up for a job in Canada at that point anyway, so it won't matter, because if Trump gets elected.
Can we put him ahead of, the food and agriculture or whatever? I think he'd be ahead of that.
I think he would just eat a lot. I don't think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'd be like, he'd end up being like, see this episode of South Park with the KFC mafia guy with the chicken? That's what he'd turn into. Like Cartman with the KFC mafia. That would be him as like. So the other cool news stories or other weird news stories I found, or was just the last week reading and everything, is they opened their first weed-friendly gym in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's interesting. They're going to be selling edibles there and allowing vaping at first. They're working on a smoking level. And then the Canada Veterans Society, their drug budget last year, 22% of it went towards medical cannabis.
Wow.
Yeah, I did not expect it to be that high either. This is on CBC's website. But yeah, medical marijuana was only legal and prescribed in 2015, and then 2015, 2016. And in that time, became 20. Last year was 22% of the veterans' drug payments, which is really crazy if you think about it. How much it just shows you how much it helps people with PTSD and all those other things. There's too many accounts on YouTube to count for how many different soldiers have given testimonials to that. And then the best one of the whole week, this is from the Telegraph. Stone sheep go on psychotic rampage after eating cannabis plants dumped in Welsh village. And apparently, some sheep ate a bunch of weed and then were terrified of everything and ended up trampling a bunch of other crops over in England, and it was just too freaking funny.
That's hilarious.
And I think that was picked up by Fox and a bunch of the other ones, but it's the original article was on the Telegraph. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny. I know Telegraph's.
That is pretty funny.
Yeah, I just thought it was just too ridiculous not to bring up. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything. Do you have any other topics or anything? If not, we'll have a little bit shorter episode tonight. We did the evening episode, so but there was a lot more people going in and out of this episode. So I think we'll try to maybe do another evening one again if that's something that works for you.
Yeah, it'll work a lot better when my wife's not sick. Obviously, then we can do it a little bit earlier too, so that that we can catch some more people on the East Coast. I'm sure probably are in bed since it's what 12:30 over there now.
Yeah. Oh, hey, there's somebody. Somebody said, "Oh, Brian Gross says Chris Christie is a fucking idiot." Y'all have been Y'all have seen that Texas GOP added cannabis reform to their agenda, and just yeah. So I've actually heard somebody. I don't know who yet. I heard somebody's might be doing a big cannabis grow. Actually, I was talking to somebody about it. I'm not going to mention who yet, but yeah, there's going to be some big cannabis projects going on in Texas here, depending on how their medical licensing stuff ends up. So.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, actually, me and someone else. Well, one of the people I'm working with on this new project is actually working with the state of Missouri's legislature on some kind of cannabis provision in the medical marijuana laws in the state of Missouri when they go fully medical rec. So we're involved with some of the write-ups and stuff for that. They're talking to him, and he asked me to talk to them or work on a little bit of that. So that's one of the other things that'll be in the pipeline later on. Yeah,
cool. When do you think you might be able to
give more details on it?
When do you think you might be able to start putting some systems together down there?
Down here, so we have. We're putting together a thing for the first 2 greenhouses here shortly, and then depending on, I gotta give them the first quote on that. Depending on that goes, we'll get that shipped here in the next week or two. Or I don't know if it'll get shipped in the next week or two, but it's gonna be about a month before we start building. Month and a half maybe. I'm gonna run home back to the States while the stuff is in transit because I'm gonna have family in town and some other stuff, and I gotta shoot up to Canada while I'm up there and then come back down. So yeah, so by the time I get all done running around, the stuff will be getting here right about the same week. So it'll be good timing that wise, and then we'll be building. And then once we get those first 2 up, we'll be able to show everybody how everything goes, and then after that, we'll be able to work on the rest of the place. So, without saying anything more than that, not really. That's just for one of the projects we're working on. We have another project that I can't talk about at all. That's going to be ridiculous. So once I can talk about, I wish I could tell you guys all the different crazy things that I'm doing. Mentioned a little bit to Marty. He can tell you it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it definitely sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Obviously, I can't talk about it either, but
yeah,
I can tell you it's exciting.
So yeah, it'll be pretty cool. There's some people that y'all have heard of before that are involved, and even if you aren't super heavy into the cannabis world, you will know people that we're working with. So, and if you've been following it all with the cannabis aquaponic world, there's some other big people from that world that are going to be joining up with us in the very near future, as well as somebody that y'all probably weren't expecting from the aquaponic world. would be pretty dope. So yeah, without saying anything else more.
Yeah, so coming up, I'll have I'll get some plants loaded into that new outdoor. I got just some that were left over from the move, like some lettuce and sage and stuff is growing in there, green onions and kind of the basics in there. But I'll start the plants vegging in there pretty soon. Get all that set up. So I'll have a couple setup videos of that, and then now that all that stuff is out of the garage, I'll be able to start working on that. So we'll be able to do that as well. So keep an eye out for those.
Alrighty, thanks everybody for watching. If you guys are interested in getting a hold of us, you can always shoot us a message on, leave a comment on the video. You can go to my channel is Potent Ponics on YouTube. You can go to my website, which is potentponics.com. You can email me at potentponics@gmail.com. Yeah, wherever you want to get a hold of me. Go to my website and check out what I do. Marty? Oh, the other thing I was going to say is shout out to realgrowers.com and Dude Grows Show for hosting us. They have give us a section on there, and shout out to Kita Life, and a shout out to Atria Hydro for giving us stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah, and so check us out. My my channel is AP Med. Steve's is Potent Ponics. And Steve, I think your mic's out.
Okay.
Oh, okay. It looked like you were trying to talk, but I think your camera was glitched. Anyway, sorry about that. So yeah, check out Steve on Potent Ponics. Mine's AP Meds on YouTube. Oh, and also take a look on my channel. I have my daughter's first video on there for her cabbage experiment. We had this smart pot that we used last year for an outdoor plant, and we aren't going to use it this year because I'm going to have less plants, as it appears. So we put one cabbage in I can't remember, I think it's probably like a 100-gallon smart pot, something like that, maybe an 80, I don't remember. Anyway, it's a good sized smart pot, and all it has is her one little cabbage in it, and we've been watering it with worm tea, and put some labs on there before we put it in, and some different stuff like that. Top dressed it with some bokashi, and so yeah, I have a feeling it's going to do pretty well. You have to get it up to 50 pounds before you can enter it in the contest, and I think we can do it.
You know what you should do is they love to bottom feed. Take like a kiddie pool and drop that thing in a kiddie pool, and then just put all your nutrients in the bottom. Let that thing bottom feed up. Especially with those smart pots, they breathe so good.
Cool. We'll do that.
Make it lazy. Even if you have a super hot day, the thing won't wilt on you.
Sounds good. So yeah, definitely check that out. That's on my channel on AP Meds. She's super excited to have her own videos on YouTube. So she's excited for that. So we'll be uploading updates on that probably like once a week or so. I have the new outdoor build that just started the playlist on that. So usually I'll do an upload about once a week in veg, and then probably 2 or 3 times a week once I start flowering heavy. So yeah, keep an eye on that outdoor, and then I'll be rebuilding the indoor over the next probably week or so. So I'll have some videos on that as well. I got some Starfighter OG that I'll be running in the indoor. So that's pretty exciting for any of you guys want to check out a strain. That Starfighter is cool. It's a great yielder, does great in probiotics, which obviously pretty much everything does. So, but my buddy grew some of it in his indoor, and it turned out amazing. So pretty excited to give that a go. My new test LED light should be here for that. So you guys will be able to check out some new LED lights that should be hitting the market from a company in Washington, which I will be able to announce that as soon as I actually get the lights. So I'll let you guys know. Other than that, that's pretty much what I have going on. And thanks for tuning in. And I know I recognize Brandon in the group, or in the group chat there from my channel. So thanks for tuning in and commenting on my videos. Always appreciate that. And I agree, Chris Christie is a fucking idiot. So that's two things we agree on. That's awesome. And thanks for tuning in live. We appreciate having people to talk to.
Also, thank you to Plant Builder for taking time to comment and joining chat as well.
Oh yeah, I didn't see him there.
Yeah.
Always like to have people on live. So
yeah, we love having live people on asking us questions. So if you guys have any questions about anything, we love to answer questions. We'll answer them on the show. Just write us or get a hold of us any way you feel like it. So, all right, thanks everybody for watching, and have a good evening or day or afternoon or morning or whenever you listen to this. Cheers.